Hi, Radioheads. This is Elle Man. I'm here with fantasy author Danielle Orsino. Now, she's a fantasy author. I love the pictures on the covers. I love her social media. And she's dressed up right here if you're watching the video, you're not just on radio. Now, Danielle, how did you end up to be on the covers of your books? I don't know that to be a normal thing for fantasy. If I was writing fantasy, I would, but how did you end up on the covers?
Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm super excited. No, it's not a normal thing, I have to say. As far as I know, as far as my publisher, Four Horsemen Publications, knows, I'm one of the only fantasy authors to grace the cover of their series. So they're calling me the Fabio of fantasy, which I think is a compliment. But
Yes.
that was actually my publication's total idea. They saw me in cosplay when I was cosplaying as my characters. And they were like, well, what are you doing with these pictures? And at the time I was like, I don't know, maybe it's promotion.
Right.
And Val Willis turned around and said, give me a day. I got an idea. And she came back with the mock-up for Locked Out of Heaven, where I was cosplaying as Lady Serena, one of the Fae characters, the mermaid, and
Right.
came back and she's like, guess what we're doing? And then she stuck my dragon Raycor, who was drawn by Pandy Van, my dragon illustrator, and they said, we've got an idea for you. We're throwing you on the cover, and from now on, you're on the cover of your series, and that's how the game is going. And so Four
Okay.
Horsemen took the risk, and I'm very appreciative of it.
So now you're technically modeling professionally now. Now I started as a
Mhm.
model and a writer, to be honest. Like almost I always did both in my whole
Oh,
entire life. Um
that's awesome.
yeah, so did you switch into like modeling from writing? Did you ever have any modeling experience before?
No, this was
Oh,
this was totally new. This was a totally new experience. It's very different because
mhm.
they always say don't judge a book by its cover, but let's face it, that's what we do when we're buying a book. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to look at the cover and be like, oh, is this going to be interesting? So
Hmm.
being on the cover and then writing, you're really exposed. You're exposed as a writer, obviously, because that's your work. But then I'm on the cover, and a lot of people, my own father did not recognize me on the first cover because I'm
Right.
blonde. And, he's like, I showed it to him and he was like, oh, who's the chick on the cover? And I'm like, Dad, that's me. And he
Oh
was
my
like, no, get
God.
out of here. So it's definitely been interesting. It's an interesting dichotomy and just learning how to model. I've cosplayed before,
Right.
but when you're cosplaying as Harley Quinn, you can stick your tongue out, you can do like all these crazy
Sure.
things. And there's pictures, there's references on comic books. So you can play. This, I'm embodying the character and they're my characters. Totally
Mhm.
different scenario.
Okay. So now I'm going to switch specifically to your books, which full
Ooh.
disclosure, I've been so freaking busy and I haven't read them. This is what I've done. And full disclosure, when I meet someone, I have to interview them or I meet a director, producer, actor. I'll meet them first now. This is what I do. I've always kind of qualified people just as much. And I'm like, oh, I want to meet them. I want to do that. And then I'll stalk them. I'll like, oh, they're cool. So that's what usually happens. So I have a feeling because as I was doing the research, I was like, I'm not really into fantasy books usually, but I'm finding myself really intrigued. So she's probably gonna have a stalker after this ends in September when I have more time. But so to
Come
go
on
right into
over.
the book, and of course I didn't read this. So all right, so you have characters called the bishops of the court of light, which I
Mm-hmm.
assumed they're good, sorta.
No, let's say one of them is.
Okay,
We'll give you one is. The rest of them could be a little shady for my fanatics out there who have read it. They know what the bishops are up to. But continue.
gotcha. So kind of just in the real world, the people that are named to be good, they're
Okay.
maybe not so good. That's maybe what's happening here.
Yeah. They've
Okay.
got some ulterior motives.
Okay. So now I'm gonna have to read
Mm-hmm.
all this. So question, I was thinking exactly that. They're probably good, but chances are they're probably not. So if you
Mm-hmm.
had to pick four people to play these bishops of light in a movie of your book, who would you
Mm-hmm.
pick to play them? Someone that we
Oh,
know on some level.
good question. Okay, so this is how I'd play it. For Bishop Awin, who is my good guy, like my good bishop out of all of them, I would probably want somebody like an Andrew Garfield.
Okay.
Somebody who's sweet. He's just, a little tender, kind of guy. For Bishop Ward, who's the best looking out of the bishops and knows he is. He's also the element of wind,
Mm-hmm.
to where Bishop Awin is fire, Bishop Ward is wind. I would want somebody like an Orlando Bloom who's never played a bad guy. I'd want somebody like that. Because
Okay.
we all know Bloom from like Lord of the Rings, but he hasn't done bad.
Oh.
I'd want a bad guy, like somebody who's never played a bad guy. You want to see him do that because he's supposed to be
Mm,
charming. For
mm.
Bishop Geddes, who is my ringleader, and he's Earth. I think somebody like a Hugh Jackman, who once again has not done bad.
Really?
I want a good, yeah, I want somebody who's like, you're like, oh, but everybody loves him. That's exactly
Yeah.
why I want him for Geddes.
Oh,
That's
okay.
that's why. And for Bishop Kair, who is my water elemental, who tends to get pushed around by the rest of the bishops, who's like on that edge of he could actually be a nice guy, but then just goes with the rest of them. I would love
Mm,
somebody, and everybody's gonna laugh at me when I say this, a Keanu Reeves who you would never think would get bullied. That's who
mm.
I'd want to play that.
I like
Just
that.
I want somebody who, like, for the bishops, you'd never imagine in those roles. That's what
Yeah.
I would want.
Yeah. And honestly, that's something I've been thinking about a lot this week. It's like some of the people you would never think to do certain things, they might do them.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the smartest things you can do in life is to always expect the unexpected and to know that people are volatile human beings. They change. If they
Yes.
were some way for 10 or 20 years, guess what? In the 21 year, the 21st, 22nd, they might be totally different. So, wise up.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I
Love
like
it.
that. All right, then. All right. So now we're going to switch it away and come back to
Mm-hmm.
the good guys and bad guys. Now, you did martial arts. I did
Mm-hmm.
very little martial arts. Now, how does it affect your discipline, your writing, your promotion? How does that spilled into your life? Because how you do anything is really how you do everything, I think.
That's a really good question. Martial arts for me, I don't think of it as a separate part of me. It's just kind of in me.
Right.
So, from a writing aspect, it definitely helped with my fight scenes. I can
Okay.
say that from day one.
In the
I
writing.
decided, yeah, in the writing, totally helped with the fight scenes because I
Wow.
didn't take on a sweeping battle. Because I've never been in
Okay.
a sweeping battle. I don't know what it's like
Okay.
to ride horses and like shoot bow and arrows and have a sword fight on top of a horse.
What, you're
So
not
I'm like,
Steven
okay,
Seagal?
no, totally not. Can you imagine that? I
Yes.
didn't want to do it from that perspective because I'm like, I
Mm,
can't give it the realism. So a lot of
okay.
my fight scenes are one-on-one or small groups where
Okay.
I'm like, I can concentrate on how the body would react
Mm,
because I've thrown these punches, I've thrown these kicks. So from that aspect, martial arts helped me to give it a more realistic feel and not as much as I love my superhero movies. And believe me, I'm the first one in line for Wonder Woman. I didn't want, that feel of all you see is a cape and a cowl and you can't really see what's happening. I wanted to give
yeah,
it that close range. You can actually feel yourself right there with the Fae fighting.
I
So
like
from that
that.
aspect, martial arts was right there. I then developed a martial art called Synchron that the Illuminasca use. That's a blend of the elements. And I kind of took from Tai Chi, from Bagua, from Wushu, all the
Wow.
stuff I've studied. That's all in there and down to the chakras and how it uses. So martial arts definitely affected how I wrote. And then I think the discipline was just there and learning from the basics up because I'm
Hmm.
not a classically trained writer. And if you want to know how not to do things, by all means, come talk to me because I've made all those mistakes. And that's
Hmm.
kind of part of learning in martial arts. You have to mess up in order to get better. So I
Mm,
was not afraid to fail because God knows I'd done that in martial arts a million and one times, fallen on my face or gotten my butt kicked. So I
right.
wasn't really scared.
Actually, question, this just came up. So I
Mm-hmm.
found different parallels between the people I know who practice martial arts and people I know that do not. And I find that the people who do not don't have a meal prep, a fitness regimen. Maybe they're
Mm-hmm.
lacking, I find, respect for themselves, respect for others, respect for the planet. Have you found certain things that martial arts generally, generalizations are dangerous, but generally it has
Mm-hmm.
like given or coincided with like certain personality traits or behaviors in different people you've observed?
I think that's a really good question. I think in general, just speaking kind of on a broad stroke,
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that martial artists are usually more disciplined
Mm-hmm.
just in their body because they've seen their body do a lot.
Right.
They've put it through a lot. So there's usually a little more respect for what their body can do. So they tend to treat it a little bit better
Right.
in that sense. So I would say that's probably a decent one, decent generalization in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
I've met some martial arts that like I've been through, heck and back, so I don't really care what happens now.
Mm-hmm.
I've met those too. But
Mm-hmm.
usually the martial artists I hang with are always looking to better themselves in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And I do appreciate that. Of course, you got the one-offs here and there, just like anything. But yeah, I would say that, they're always kind of looking to better themselves and keep their body intact because they know what it can do and they
Yeah.
appreciate it.
I found that, and I found that respect for the body also seems to translate to respect for other people, respect for the planet. Like all the
Mhm.
people I've seen that litter, and I haven't caught too many because I just try to
Mhm.
stay away from people that would litter. But
Good point.
none of them seem to have a fitness regimen. They just seem to have like no respect for anything. So I found like a parallel of respect in martial arts. So now we're gonna get back to your book. So we have the Fae and the fairy world. Now, my mom, who's
Mhm.
69 now, as of the other day, I'll be 38 in a couple of weeks. She told me fairies exist years ago, and she gave me this crystal, and I was like, lady, I don't know.
Mhm.
She's like, the crystal will turn different colors. And I was like, you know what? And it's actually that was one of the conversations that got me into studying spirituality. Now I'm a Reiki master. I've taken 3 rounds of psychic development classes. I could technically sit down and probably do mediumship readings for people, but I don't advertise that.
Mhm.
So my question is, do you believe in fairies? What are your thoughts on fairies? Is this totally fictional? Do you have any accounts or personal stories in the fairy or not even fairy? Let's just say the supernatural realm.
It's funny. I was not into fairies when I started writing this book. Let me just preface that. Yes, I read Interview with a Vampire. I adore. I'm totally into comic books, comic book nerd. Chris Claremont is huge inspiration for me. So I'm totally in that nerddom. But
Mm-hmm.
I was not a fairy person. I can't say where this idea came. To this day, I cannot say what made me tell that patient, a story about the Fae. I have no idea.
I heard that
So
interview, so I know what you're
yeah,
talking
I
about.
still don't know. And I just spoke with him 5 minutes before I did this interview with you. I was just speaking to that very patient, and we laugh about it because I still don't know what made me tell him that. So there is definitely a collective that I think we tap into as creative
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in that. Do I think fairies exist? I think elementals exist. I think we
Okay.
we put the label of fae on them and fairies, just like we put the label of angels or demons. I think we label as humans, and it's just energy. Now I could be, right now there could be a fairy looking over my shoulder
Right.
that I don't see, looking at me, going, "Oh, really, girl?
Right.
We're gonna have a little talk about this later." I don't know, but I'm definitely not opposed to the idea. I'm
Mm.
completely open to it. I just think it's what we choose to believe in as humans and
Mm-hmm.
what our brain can comprehend. And I think it's all good. I don't put anybody down for it. I got my crystals, I've got all that stuff, and I'm
I
like,
don't
hey, if
know.
it works for you, man, go for it.
I keep my mind open. I was just told by
Yep.
a pretty well-known psychic that I have basically the souls of women who've been abused that are trying to give me messages. Okay,
Okay.
that's pretty heavy.
That's
So I
that's
guess there's
that's a
some,
heavy burden.
yeah. So back to you when you're writing now. All right. What behaviors, foods, or exercises seem to lead to writer's block, and what behaviors, foods, exercise experiences seem to just have you writing and flowing? Is there anything that precedes the flowing in the block?
I'm gonna say I've been very lucky that I have not had an issue with writer's
I knew
block.
it. I knew it.
I haven't, yeah, I have, that's not
I
been
don't
a
see that.
problem for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
knock on wood, that's not an issue. And I think part of that is because I am not classically trained and I don't put myself in that box. I just kind of flow and go with it.
No.
When I'm feeling like I have to get that spark of inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
I will go and hit the bag. I totally, I'm into that. I need my exercise. I'm in the gym every day, whether I'm hitting
Yeah.
something, lifting weights, whatever. I do need that activity, that
Mm-hmm.
physical activity. I definitely need that. When I'm writing, I have music going. I'm not somebody who can sit and write in silence. Don't. God bless you if you can do it. Any
Yeah.
writer out there, if you can do it, awesome. Me, no. I got RuPaul's Drag Race going on. I got the Real Housewives arguing. That's fine.
So you have the Real Housewives arguing while you're actually typing?
Oh yeah. I got Real Housewives of Beverly Hills going on, and I'm sitting there as I'm writing. I'm going, Erica, you tell them, and I'm like, yep, I got you, babe. As it's going, I got RuPaul's Drag Race going on. No problem. I can go. When I'm really into like final edits, I have a soundtrack of the entire book that plays, and I will play that, and that follows the emotional crescendo and that journey, and I will play that on a loop through Spotify as I'm editing, and that kind of keeps me in, okay, remember this journey, like this is where we're going, keep that theme. And that helps me, and that'll push me through. And sometimes even if I'm like, I know that I've been to the gym and I'm on my way home and I'm about to do some writing, I'll play that soundtrack again, to be like, okay, this is the mood I have to get into.
Yeah.
And I'm good.
Yeah, you're in the soundtrack of the movie. I feel like this should be made, these things should be made into movies or short films, or at least something.
Thank you.
Video. So we're almost at the end. Maybe this will be my last question. Writing can equal isolation, usually. However, you seem to be able to have things around you. So you could probably have a party going on and you'd still write a book. Now, it's usually not a group activity. How do you balance this isolation time, if you even balance it at all, with connection time? Because usually to be a healthy human, you need some type of connection, at least a few times a week, if not multiple times a day. Like, how do you balance the isolation and connection?
I think because I did a lot of writing, part of my book came out during COVID. My first book came out, during COVID. So a lot of my editing was done while we were all in isolation. So I think I kind of got used to it, but my pups are always around me when I'm writing. So that's helpful. There's my connection. I go to Muay Thai 3 times a week. So I am, I do have some human interaction. I think I have a good support system. I think that's a big part of it.
Okay.
And I have a lot of voices in my head, to be quite honest with you, with these characters, and I'm talking to them a lot, and they're right. They're to me, they're real. I can joke that when I'm writing, King Jarvok is right over my shoulder going, no, I wouldn't say that. Back up.
That's great.
He's like, I don't do that. Indiga's right there. My dragon's there. They're to me very real. I don't feel isolated. I really don't. I do live and breathe this world. Heck, I dress in this world.
Right.
I don't feel isolated. I do interact with my fans a lot. They DM me. I have fans that'll, tell me what's going on in their life to see if they can get it written into the book, because they've had a crazy experience.
Maybe.
And they're like, this just happened. And they tell me.
Right.
So I'm pretty accessible. I just don't feel isolated. I know some authors do feel like that.
Yeah.
I don't. My publisher is also accessible, and we have a good support system within our group of authors, our stable of authors. C.R. Rice, I'm very close with. She's a fellow author. So we're always bouncing ideas off. I just don't feel that isolation.
Yeah, no, you seem like someone who's connected and moving your body physically, which physically moves energy, your chi, and you're in the flow. And you're doing a lot right, I think. So super motivating, super commendable. We're at the end because we have 2 more segments to record tonight. And we can't go into Bo Roberts' interview. So I have so much more to ask you, and I'd love to hear more from you. But Mark Torres will be mad, right, Mark? He's not here. He'll hear this. So final words, any final thoughts for It Came From the Radio? And please drop your website, social media, where people can find you.
Thank you so much for having me. You guys can find me at birthofthefae.com, fourhorsemenpublications.com. Follow me on Instagram at birthofthefae_novel, or you can always check out Locked Out of Heaven on Bookie Call, which is your place to find your next great bookie date. So you can check it out. It's an app, iOS, Android. You can swipe right, swipe left. Think of it as Tinder for books, and check out Locked Out of Heaven there.
Thank you, Danielle Orsino. I hope you've all enjoyed. You can catch more of her on Instagram, online. And now back to more It Came From the Radio. See you later, Mark.